Hi, and welcome back to our third episode of the Maris podcast. You're here with Gabby and Chloe and our special guest, Mr. Good. Mr. Good, would you like to tell us about your role at Maris College?
I'm the careers practitioner or the careers learning facilitator here at Maris College. It's my second year here, but I've been doing careers for 10 years or more.
Okay, well, let's just get straight into questions. So he's here today because the subject selections are going on, and we thought this would be a good podcast to come out for people to listen to if they're having trouble with going down a VCAL pathway or a VCAL. So we just got two questions. So what should senior students take into consideration when choosing a pathway, and why is it important?
Okay, so would you like about the subjects, how to choose the subjects, or would you rather about pathways?
Is it I don't know.
How to choose the best pathway?
Yeah, how do you know if a VCA is a good pathway or a VCAL is a good pathway?
Okay, it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
So it's an individual. That's why even for VCAL we have those interviews before people get accepted into VCAL. So therefore we can really try to match how suitable the pathway is going to be for their eventual career direction.
Yeah.
What people really need to look at, and it's really hard because you're year 10, 11 or 12 and trying to work out in terms of how old you are and how much experience you've had, and trying to work out, where am I going to end up in the future? Nobody quite ever knows, and some people know straight away, and some people go, oh, it might take them until 24 or 25 and you only can go on your life experience. I guess the best thing to do is really use your friends and family and allies, if you like, of which pathway is best for you. Get as much information as possible, what sort of feels right, where your interests lie. Can you see yourself sort of in an office environment or outside, or using your hands, or do you think you'll go straight to university, or would you rather go through a TAFE pathway or an apprenticeship or traineeship? And have you looked into all those sort of avenues and directions?
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's in year 10 and at Mars, that's when you can finally pick a subject you want to do? But what would you say if they are looking into doing VCAL next year? What would you say to them to do?
Well, they have to obviously understand what VCAL offers, and the best people really sometimes for that would be the VCAL educators, but also a lot of the students. So that's why I've got those year 10s can actually talk to year 11s and 12s and go, okay, well, what's involved in a day-to-day? Because sometimes educators can put a certain spin on it, but the students can really give the groundwork and nuts and bolts for it. But it's, I guess, when it comes down to it, it's applied learning, and it's really more of a hands-on, even though we don't really want to say it's just for hands-on learners, but it's more for the people who like to see where their learning is going and like the way that the learning is delivered in VCAL. So it's not really whether VCE or VCAL is any better than each other. It's just a different way of learning, and which way is the best way for you.
Yeah. What is the difference between VCAL and VCE, and is having an understanding of these two pathways important when it comes to a career pathway?
Okay. Definitely important to know the difference. You get a VCAL certificate at the end of year 11, and you also get a year 12 and VCAL certificate at the end of year 12. And also get a VCE. If you go VCE pathway, you'll also get a VCE certificate. So either way, you do get year 12 completion. It's how you go about it. VCE is more what we'd call the traditional way, that sort of reading and writing and direct, sometimes explicit teaching, that you've got 5 subjects in year 12 and they lead towards an ATAR. The only point of an ATAR was actually created by universities, and the point of the ATAR is so therefore the universities can choose who can go to university and who doesn't go to university. Whereas VCAL, you're either going for a foundation, intermediate or senior, depending on the level that you're at. And because you're not getting a direct ATAR from the VCAL, you can't go directly to university, but you can go through TAFE or apprenticeships which lead in pathway to universities, and sometimes that's a really good way of going about it. Particularly I've known a number of people who have probably actually saved a lot of time, money, and effort by going through the VCAL pathway into TAFE and apprenticeships, and then going to university and going through the VCE directly into a university pathway. So it really depends on the person. It depends on the way you learn and understanding what each delivers.
Yeah, and isn't the VCAL certificate at the end of year 12, that's equivalent to a VCE certificate or something like that?
They're both the year 12 certificates, so you basically get a certificate in either way. What would be the best for you depends on where you're going to take it and how you're going to use it.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for coming here and talking about that.
We're back with Sarah Sanaki, so year 12 VC student. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. What VC subject did you pick in year 10 and why did you pick it?
So I picked drama because drama's always been something that I've been really interested in, and I thought that it would be a good idea to pick something that I knew that I would enjoy for my first VCE.
Fair enough. So what advice would you give a year 10 on deciding what pathway to choose?
Well, when it comes to choosing VET, VCE, and VCAL, I think that they're all very different options, and I think there's a lot of impressions around them that aren't necessarily true. So I think it's a really good idea to talk to people who have done them to actually get a proper personal overview of them, because they suit very different learning learning styles, and so I think that it's important to pick the right one and not necessarily go with what other people say.
Yeah. When choosing your VCE subject in year 10, did you know what you wanted to do when you graduate school?
Yeah, so I've sort of always enjoyed little kids and teaching. So I sort of had an impression that I wanted to go into teaching, but I didn't initially think that drama was going to be a part of that. And it just so happened that I don't think I could live my life without it, because I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what are some ways to manage the stress on VCE students?
I think that something that I struggle with a lot is giving myself permission to put the homework aside.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important part. Like, obviously, getting it all done, getting the work done, and doing all of your study is super important. But you can't do the work if your brain is all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think that being able to have those other things that you enjoy and not feeling guilty about doing those other things is super, super important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for letting us interview you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.
So we're with Bridget now, and she is the VCAL leader. Do you want to say hi?
Hi guys.
So I'm just going to ask you the same questions we asked Sarah, but a bit different. So the first one is, what is VCAL? What does it involve?
VCAL is a hands-on program for year 11 and 12s, which you do a TAFE course through once a week for 2 years. You will also do a placement once a week in your future industry.
How do you find it, doing the placements and TAFE?
Yeah, it's good because when you do your placements on Fridays, you kind of get a gist if you like that career or like that job, and you can kind of cancel out things you may have thought you'd like to do.
Yeah, and in year 11, when you can choose doing VCA or VCAL, did you have a rough idea what you wanted to do when you graduated?
Yeah, I knew what industry I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly what job I wanted to do. But doing placements, it narrowed it down and made a definite choice. But yeah.
So did you know you wanted to go to TAFE or university?
In my head, I was thinking of going to TAFE instead of year 12, but I get more out of staying for year 12 because I can also do TAFE at school. And then I knew I didn't need to go to university either before.
But in VCAL, you can go to TAFE, but then after you do TAFE, you can still go to university.
Yeah, and some courses you can do straight off a VCAL qualification.
And what advice would you give the year 10s on deciding what pathway to choose?
I think if they look at what classes they like and their industries and have a talk to Mr. Good and their teachers and parents and see what industry they're most passionate about at the moment, and see if they like hands-on work or if they're really good at sitting in a classroom and doing work, because VCE is probably a better option. But if you like to do hands-on stuff or you just want to get down to it, VCAL's probably your better option.
Thank you for listening to our third Mars podcast. Come back in 2 weeks for our next Mars podcast. Hope this has helped you in what you want to do, VCAL or VCE. We also have a podcast email where you can send through your questions that you have, which is podcast@maris.vic.edu.au. Also be in the description, or you could just comment on the Facebook post Mr. Tasker has, or in the comments of this YouTube video. Bye!